High River, April 11th, 1906. Dear, I believe that never in my life have I written a letter in such curious circumstances. I have reached High River, 40 miles south of Calgary, Alberta, after a few days of travel. I suppose I had better tell you right from the beginning. On March 22nd, in the year of our Lord 1906, I, accompanied by Mr. High Hunt and G.C. Pratt, took train for Liverpool. Arrived there, we dined, then went on to the landing stage. My companions got permission to come onto the ship and inspect my quarters. At 3:15 p.m., we sailed out amidst loud cheering. The weather for the first afternoon was all that could be desired, but at about 5 p.m. on Friday, I took it into my head to take absolute rest from all exercise, so went to bed without dinner. In this frame of mind, I lay in bed till 7:30 on Sunday morning, when, realizing that I should miss another breakfast if I did not go for it, I got up. Being asleep during most of that period, I cannot say what sort of weather was about. Suffice it to say that during the rest of the voyage, though the boat rolled considerably, I was not seasick. On March 30th, I caught my first glimpse of Canada. We were moored in the middle of Halifax Harbor, where we had arrived in the middle of the night. Coming up the saloon stairs, I saw through the doorway a forest of chimneys and houses shrouded in smoke and fog. I was not much impressed by my first glimpse of the clear, dry atmosphere. However, when we had disposed of 3/4 of the passengers and got rid of the crowd of customs officials, we sailed up the estuary. In the middle of the entrance to the harbor is an island of rock. This had been hollowed out and made into a fort, from the various ports of which are protruding formidable-looking guns. On each side of the estuary, on the cliffs above us, are the turret guns commanding every inch of the water. On Sunday, April 1st, a suitable day for a fellow to arrive in Canada, at 6:30 p.m., we moored in Portland in USA, but owing to the ceremonies to be gone through by doctors and customs officials, we could not disembark till Sunday morning. I found my luggage all right, having seen it slid down a water chute onto the wharf. It hadn't suffered as much as some other people's, who did not need to unlock the boxes to get at the contents. When you come over to Canada, I advise you to get a jolly strong trunk. Nothing in the ordinary way of business will stand the strain. A customs officer made me open my big box, in which he rummaged a bit for stuff, but missed all the contraband. So having checked my baggage through to Winnipeg, I started to look for a train. You see here, they put a check on your luggage and give you the duplicate. So when you arrive at the destination, you present the check duplicate and they give you the baggage, thus freeing you from all the bother. After numerous inquiries, I found the train, and as no one could tell me when it started, I did not dare get out for fear of getting left behind. So I sat in it from 10:15 till 12. The carriage soon became filled with emigrants from the steerage part of the vessel, most of whom were foreigners. Your ticket is a long strip of paper from which portions are torn at different periods of the journey, and the conductor bothers you at all times of the day or night to look at it. Mine had no less than 15 punch holes in it at the end of the journey. When you come to Canada, before you embark on the train, lay in a big stock of provisions in a bag or a box for that purpose only, as the food to be procured on the line is extremely dear. See, 1 cup of coffee, 10 cents, 1 sandwich, 10 cents, 1 orange or an apple, 5 cents. And it takes quite a few sandwiches to satisfy me. Get buns, bread, tinned meat, fruit, cheese, or anything satisfying. But, to resume, at 12 the train started and I had my first sample of real Canadian scenery. On both sides, high hills simply covered with trees, mostly silver birch. It looked very fine. The train wound in and out amongst the hills without once going through a single tunnel or deep cutting. The rails were shockingly laid down, not laid in chairs like those in England, but merely fastened down by the head of a large spike nail driven into the sleeper. At 10:30 p.m., I reached Montreal, the first stage of my journey. I found there was not a train for Winnipeg till 9:30 next morning, so I slept in the waiting room. The next section of the journey was more interesting than the first. The train skirted the northern shores of Lake Superior, which of course looks just like the sea. The railroad is cut out on the face of the rock and cliff, and the sea is literally just under our feet. The sensation, whirling around the curves, with 3 feet of rock between the rail and the edge of the cliff, was glorious. At one curve, nearer to Winnipeg, I saw 15 grain cars lying wrecked by the side of the line, literally splintered to bits and wheat piled up in all directions. At Winnipeg, I was met by Mr. Riley, who showed me some rooms where I stayed for a day or two. Here, I met a young fellow, Jack Bell. He has no relations in Yorkshire, who had had 2.5 years farming in Ontario and was going west to improve his farming education. Mr. Riley was very kind to us. He gave us introductions to men in High River, so we continued the journey together. Winnipeg is on the edge of the Great Prairie. Up to this point, there has been nothing but forest. I don't know what to tell you of the farming here. The plowing is just the worst you ever saw. All the plows are made sit on and take a furrow up to 16 inches wide. It may interest Harry to know that I've seen a furrow 840 miles long, which is the distance from Winnipeg to High River. You see, for about 50 yards on each side of the line, there is a strip of plowing to prevent sparks from the engine causing a prairie fire. Nevertheless, we ran right through a fire. The prairie for miles was as black as coal, and on the horizon was a thick cloud of smoke. We had to change at Calgary. Here, we saw our first cowboys. They were mounted on untidy little ponies that traveled fearfully fast and were as lively and wild as colts. They used the high-backed, high-pommeled saddle with huge wooden stirrups and a great lasso hanging from the back. They do not jockey when the horse trots, but always sit quite still in the saddle. There are heaps of them in High River. The climate is baking hot. We have been wandering about all day in search of work. Jack has got a place, and I expect to tomorrow. I cannot say whether the cold out here is dry, but I know that the heat is. The ground is as dry as snuff, and horses and vehicles are enveloped in a cloud of dust as they go along. We never see a two-wheeled conveyance of any kind. For driving, the farmers use a light four-wheeled rig, and all carting is done with wagons. 2 horses are generally used for rigs and wagons, and these are absolutely never yoked tandem, but always side by side. You would imagine to look at some of the teams that they had never been broken in at all, for they kick and plunge and are generally very awkward. They are often driven full gallop, or if not, at an exceedingly fast trot. This morning, I saw a man mount a colt for the first time. He just got on and made it go. I don't know how he stuck onto it. It pitched about so. It is now April 14th. I've just got onto a place. The man's a right enough sort, but I care not about his wife, 5 children, all under 7 years old, make the day hideous with squalls. I don't know what pay I shall get. I had an offer of $25 a month, but on a ranch, I thought I'd better turn to farming. So I'm stopping here a week, and if we can't arrange about pay, I shall by that time have found another place and saved my board and lodging. The arrangements are very crude indeed. A rough wooden stable, all chinks and cracks. A granary worse still, and a couple of pig pens form the buildings. Broncos and cattle run out all the year. The binders, drills, etc. are all kept outside, exposed to the wind and weather. The farm is 7 miles from High River, the nearest village. There is a grand view of the Rockies from most parts of the farm. There is no postal delivery here. My address will be H.E. Pratt, care of W.G. Bott, Post Office, High River, Alberta, Canada. I am now going to stop. You needn't expect letters like this from me often. It's a great feat for me. I shall be glad to hear from you soon. I am yours affectionately, Harold E. Pratt.